Okay, so this is the second class on Flash, Introduction to Flash, and the last class I kind of breezed through a lot of different topics, and my goal was to create that little animation that I created and to cover just a variety of different topics. And in this class, I want to go more in depth into the timeline specifically, and go into some tweening, motion tweening and shape tweening. So to start off, I'm just gonna use the templates they have here. We'll use an advertising template, and we'll just do a leaderboard. Okay. Seems to be a little buggy this morning. That's weird.
Huh.
Okay. It's weird. It's not allowing me to pull down. It just moves itself. Well, we need the timeline here, so we'll just leave that up. The first thing to note about a timeline is that's basically what it is. It's denoting time, and the way it does it measures time in frames, and depending on your frame rate will depend on the speed of your animation. And let me open this up here. There we go. A little better. In our current document here, our frame rate is 24 frames per second. So 24 frames are these little white boxes here, but these are individual frames. So 24 of those would equal 1 second of time. And you have a playhead. By default, if you don't have any actual frames, then you can't really move your playhead. You can select frames by just clicking on the frame, but you can't move your playhead across the frames. You can scrub your playhead across when you actually have some animation. We'll do that a little bit later. Right now I just want to go over the different functions with the timeline though. So the timeline, we have our frames here, and to the left of our frames we have our layers, and it works somewhat similarly to like the layer palette in Photoshop, whereas as you build layers, whatever layer is on top is going to be in front of your document here. It's going to be the topmost graphic element or element there. Flash actually loads when you create your Swift file and you run your project. It actually loads the bottom layer first, and then builds up from there. And that can be useful when you're actually coding to know that, because you're always going to want to put your action script layer all the way on top. With the layers here, we have the ability to turn off a layer, just like in Photoshop. You can lock a layer, and then you have basically your outline color. So if we create an object and we have it selected, sorry, I have the if you click on the outline, it'll turn it to outline mode, so you can look at it. But you can also change the color of it by double clicking on it, and change outline color to something else. It can be helpful when you're building up your if you have 20-30 layers, it's good to color code them. So this was green. Down below we have new layer icon. That's how you create new layers. New folders. So if you do have 20-30 layers, you want to group them and put like layers in a folder. Just for organization, makes it a little easier to look at. And then the trash can. Just click the trash can, deletes the layers. Down below here, below the timeline, we have some options. You have your frame rate, so you can adjust your frame rate in the properties panel, or you can adjust it down here. it does the same thing. You can notice as I change it down here, it is changing in the properties as well. Then you have your current frame. Since there isn't any other actual frames, it's only allowing me to use frame 1. What you can do, if I click on a particular frame, let's say 15. Actually, we'll make it put this back to 24. And then we'll just click on the frame 24 here. And right now, this is giving you representation of our timeline, these white and gray boxes, but there aren't actually any frames there. So to create frames, you just right click and just click on Insert Frame, and then that'll put frames in that area. As you can see, it's white right now. That means that it's a blank keyframe, and blank keyframes basically are frames that don't have any art in them. There's no data. So if I went back to frame 1 and I created a box, we can see that now it turned all gray. And when your frames are gray, that just basically denotes that you have art in those frames. The first frame that represents the layer is always going to be it's always going to have a keyframe on it. And basically, a keyframe is any frame that designates artwork's properties, or artwork properties have changed. So the fact that this exists right here, like this square, it creates a keyframe telling you where the rotation of the square, the transformation, the width and height of it, and where it exists on this document. It's basically denoting all those aspects of this object with this keyframe. If I want, I can create another keyframe. I'll do it on 5 here. And to create a keyframe, you just right-click on the frame and just click on Insert Keyframe. Now, if I just move this over here, we can see that on each keyframe it changes our properties for our object change. And if I scrub through, now I can scrub through because I actually have more than one frame, so I can actually scrub through them by just clicking on the timeline marker and just clicking and dragging it across. But so right now we have this box, and from frame 1 to 4 it doesn't do anything. It basically stays in the same place until we hit 5, and then it jumps to the next properties for that object, which was a transformation. I basically just I just moved the object across the stage there. Generally, that's not how you want to animate things, but so what you would want to do is you want to create what's called tweening, and tweening is basically creates an animation in between points. So we have this one keyframe here, this other keyframe here. So if I created a tween on here, it's going to make up the animation that basically brings this box from here to there. And I'll go into that in just 1 second. Talk about blank keyframes just really quick. We make an insert blank keyframe, and when you make a blank keyframe, it's just basically a white frame with a white circle in it, a white box with a white circle in it, and that basically denotes that object doesn't exist anymore in this point of time. It's still on the stage and it still really exists, but at this point in time it doesn't, and basically it stops. And that's basically a good way to just stop an animation from going.